Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Minh and I'm here with Matthew from the office at NDIS Property Australia, and you are listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Matt, what's today's exciting topic about?
Today's topic is about kind of a did you know session where we kind of talk about what they don't tell you, all about different topics in SDA. So we'll be kind of going across the field a bit on a number of different topics. But I suppose the aim of this is to be, provide some points that are eye-opening that you might not be aware of or that you might not have thought of. So we just thought we'd just do this topic just to address some issues which probably would normally fall outside of what is standardly spoken about when it comes to SDA. Particularly from an investor standpoint, and then explore some of the ideas.
So there's no ranking of topics. These are all random topics here.
These are just all random topics.
Okay, so Matt, why don't you choose one or two and begin the process? And mate, go choose whichever you want here.
Let's talk about fire sprinklers.
Okay,
those first. They're $1,000 per year per person.
So what I didn't realise, Matt, last month was, because very rarely people have fire sprinklers for their SDA homes, right? But if you use the SDA calculator, it actually is an extra $1,000 per year per person. So it's really $3,000 per year per house.
Right.
So the cost of fire sprinklers are about 40 to 50 grand per year, right? So you are incentivized to actually have a fire sprinkler, and also it's also a good idea to actually have fire sprinklers too. Because some states, I'm not sure which ones, if it's Class B category build design, it's Sydney, as an example, you've got to have fire sprinklers in your HBS.
Perth as well?
Yes, as well, yes.
Yep.
So we'll cover the design, build categories, the build categories separately some other time with the builder. Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. It's a very complicated topic, and I don't know. I confess I don't know the answer to all these questions. So I'd rather leave to another builder to talk to on a podcast session with us one day. But yeah, so we advise, not mandatory in all states, but we advise people to consider doing a fire sprinkler for 40, 50 grand costs, and you're getting $3 grand a year. Also
income.
Three participants. Yeah.
Okay. I suppose the next topic would be SDA and MTA as backup solutions for a property.
So we've covered this in the past with Rob Maxwell. SDA is a very complex topic, but when you throw on top of it the MTA and STA, short-term accommodation topic, it is also a little bit more complicated. MTA is medium-term accommodation, and it allows provided to an investor and landlord to get, I think, $130 or $140 per day per participant per room. It's about $1,000 a week. So what qualifies a person for MTA funding? Emergency funding is short-term funding.
Would that be where they're moving between houses?
Yeah.
Or?
So if you are, example, you're in the hospital, you are SDA funded for a HBS house. You got nowhere to go, right?
Yep.
So you are given MTA funding to source a medium-term accommodation, which is 90 days, only 90 days in this one location. So you got to move every 90 days, only while you're waiting for your SDA dwelling to be being built. Okay? Being built is the key word. So if you have a house being built in a suburb somewhere, which is going to take, as you know, a year and a half to build a house, right? Call it a year and a half. You have to move every 90 days in a different MTA location. Now, MTA could be a normal dwelling, a normal house. It doesn't have to be SDA compliant. Medium-term accommodation is sort of, a little bit of ramps, bit of handrails, considered as a accommodation by
substitute for what?
Yeah, correct, for still provider.
Yeah.
So it can be an SDA, it can be a normal house, but it's funded for participants who are medium-term accommodation for 90 days. That's medium-term. STA, as we've covered before in the past, in the podcast, is short-term accommodation, which you want to listen to it, go from there. So that's the topic of STA and MTA. If you have an empty SDA house, you can use your dwelling for MTA or STA as well. Okay? Just in case you're worried about what are my fallback plans if my house is empty. Yeah.
Cool. If you invest via a corporate entity,
A company, yeah.
You can claim back a bit of GST on the build package price.
Yes.
Can you go into a bit of detail about that?
So you can invest as in personal name or a family trust or a company, right? And you can claim your GST that's incurred in the build cost. So I've seen a few clients do that as well. I've also seen other entities charge a GST component to their sale price and investors claim them back with an entity. Yeah.
And is that in all states or?
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct.
Excellent.
Again, if you want to know more, talk to your accountant, everyone.
So another topic that's worth mentioning would be the roster of care involving support workers and the allowable hours per site for support.
Yeah, so when we were in the Melbourne event, Matt, about 3 months ago, I think, one of the speakers, David Watson, an architect and SCSS, he talked about people who do developments for SDA community residences, right? So they're talking about villas, right? So in a scenario where you might have 4 villa apartments on a site there, it could be also a duplex as well, duplex or a small scale unit project. There are limitations of 6. If there's 6 residents on a site, but you can't have any more than 7 support workers in a 24-hour period. So if there were more than 7 support workers in the 24-hour period, you're operating unlawfully, right? And you need to avoid the neighbour complaints from operating unlawfully. So community residences cannot be strata titled. So strata title is when you strata a subdivision of a block of land or units there. So villas are normally 3, 4, 5, or 6 typically. And if people complain about the number of workers coming to the site all the time, all the cars in the front,
it's not a good thing.
They'll complain to council, and council will shut down the operation. So you cannot operate a SIL business or SDA business on site, because they will have workers from council watching and counting the number of people going in and out all the time, workers, right? So you cannot have more than 7 support workers 24 hours. Be very careful there, okay?
I feel like that's another reason to not build a big group home.
Yeah.
Because people just can't get the support they need.
Well, you're right, group homes, but the community residents are more like the villa, 10-pack villas, 6-pack villas kind of thing, yeah. So be aware that to overcome this, you need to have your DA in place with the council to overcome this issue there. So again, this is a property matter to deal with your builder and town planner, I suppose, yeah. Moving on.
So on that note, another topic would be the challenges in working with SIL providers from an SDA perspective.
Yeah.
An SDA provider perspective, I should say.
So did you know, everyone who's listening, that it's not necessarily a good thing to actually have a housing provider and a SIL provider wearing 2 hats? Okay? The government will eventually legislate to not allow, to force a separation of services. So if you're a SIL provider or a housing provider, you can't be both. And you asked me before, Matt, why?
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest, you said.
Can you understand why? Can you just imagine for a moment?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I suppose it would just be a situation where they would be incentivized to do one thing as part of one role and then incentivized to do another as a developer or builder.
Yep. So if I was a participant and you're my SIL provider and you're not treating me well at all, and I sack you as a SIL provider service, you're gone.
Yep.
But then again, I turn around and you're also the landlord.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a little bit awkward situation there?
Well, yeah, at least
there it is.
Nowhere else. Yeah.
The value kick you out eventually. I mean, it will eventually happen where there's separation of services between the two. Yeah. Very important. Yep. Moving on.
So next topic would be confusion of information, causing disruptions and a reluctance of developers and builders to create SDA product.
So we get a lot of builders calling us all the time, developers.
I feel like this is an ongoing issue.
Oh, mate. I wish more guys listen to our podcast, yeah. They just have no idea. I mean, they want to help. They want to be part of it. But remember, their objective is totally different, to make money.
Yep.
They're not building for fun, for charity. They're building to make money. And they want to maximize their return. And as you know, the news, Matt, like everyone else knows, builders are dropping like flies at the moment. They're just going bankrupt, belly up everywhere in Australia. So they're struggling to survive given the market conditions, right?
Yep.
So they're trying to find ways to make money. They're trying to find ways to survive. This SDA market is a way for them to survive by charging more to build products, I guess.
But on that note, there's more pressure on them to deliver product which is cheaper or not too standard, I suppose.
Yeah.
And hope that it passes, but it obviously, as an end result for a participant, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, so it's very confusing, this topic of SDA, NDIS, and that's why it's hard for them to get their head around it all. So anyway, it is what it is, Matt. Can't moving on. Yeah.
So I suppose on that note, in terms of designing a house which is fit for participants, not fit to make money, can we talk about maybe some of the design features, storage, privacy of areas?
So, did you know that building a house with 4 beds, 4 baths, and 1 living area is not good enough? You got to have storage space for their extra wheelchairs. You got to have extra amenities in the house to make it more suitable to living. You got to have, hopefully, courtyards, private independent living. You got to have a nice sensory garden in the backyard. You got to have automation in the house. So and also lockable kitchens. If you feel like you have a participant who may be a little bit want to play around with tools and knives and things, all right? You can design a house kitchen to it's all lockable, right? Did you know that having a one entry exit to a kitchen is not suitable for a robust house? Because what if a participant traps a person in the corner of the kitchen, she can't get out? Having an open space island to run around and get out. Did you know that having extra exit strategies, rooms, doorways, living room, bedrooms, media room is a good idea? Because you got to have safety. Someone said to me on a Zoom today, Matt, an unhappy sill is an unhappy house. Right? So you got to think about the safety of the workers there who are in the house there with the providers. So all these features, again, future-proofing or safety, whatever you want to call it, these are all applicable to the design of the house. So that's a very important did you know topic there.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. I suppose just on a completely different note, maybe we could talk about kind of the reluctance of parents to let go of their disabled child to go into SDA.
So why I've brought this up as a topic here is because I don't want to be mean about this topic, but it's the truth. It actually happens, right? A lot of carers are actually parents. They get paid to look after their children. So if they get paid to look after their children for the last 20, 30 years as a primary carer, because, if you're not working, you're a carer. You're getting paid, you're a couple $100 a week to be a carer.
Yep. Yeah.
You lose your child to the system, being the NDIS scheme. You lose your income, right?
Yep.
That's what common sense says. I've been told for someone from Summer Foundation, who told me from their learned experiences a long time ago, that a lot of families often do not want to let go of their children not because it's a better outcome, because it's the money factor. You're being paid a carer's pension as a parent, and you lose that income if your child goes to a SIL home or an SDA home. So the fact of the matter is there's an element of resistance from parents. Some, I'm not saying all.
Yep.
And I apologize if everyone's thinking I am. I'm not. There are some people out there who think with their mind financially and not the best outcome for the child, the participant, right? So I'm just saying it's here now that it's an issue as to why certain people sort of still living at home with the parents as who should be in a facility, not facility, but in a
house which is catered more towards
a housing apartment that is catered for participants. Moving on.
Yeah, no worries. So another thing, and I literally just dealt with this earlier today, just talking about IL being 70% of the market, because I see a lot of people out there and they want a provider-driven, participant-driven package, but they want to make sure that it's very safe, it's guaranteed income, and then they also want the potential for very high returns. And it's kind of a situation where it's pick one kind of outcome, I suppose. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's quite normal for everyone to want to pay as little as possible and get the maximum return from the investment, and with no risk at all.
Yep,
it makes sense from a person's point of view. However, in a perfect world, in the real world, that ain't happening. Of course, you want to have the highest return from the least price expose spent on your investment, but it's just too hard to get all that. Get the best price and the best return, the best yield, no risk. No, it's just. I mean, I got nothing to say, Matt.
Yeah,
I'm like no comment.
Yeah,
this is common sense here. I mean, what do you want to say about that?
Yeah.
There's an old saying, Matt. There's high return means high risk.
Yeah.
Low return means low risk. That's just common sense.
It applies to this industry along with every other industry. Yeah.
You're all our listeners are smart adults who know what they're doing in a way. If your risk profile is high and you can take a high tolerance of risk, a lot of money in the bank, in the event that it's empty for 6 months, cool. Go the high risk path. But if you can't afford to lose any money, then you should take a more conservative approach. That's all I got to say.
Fair enough. So on that note, I just touched on it briefly. Participant-led, provider-led. It's a good way to obviously de-risk your approach into SDA. And I suppose on that note, just not going in blindly.
Yep.
Being aware of where demand exists. I suppose of being open to other areas that you might not have considered for a regular residential property investment, but you might need to consider for SDA in order to have the best chance of getting the best outcome for your investment.
Speaking of other areas, Matt, you just spoke to me earlier about a lady client of yours who's looking at investing up north.
Yep.
But she only wanted to stay in Queensland.
Yep.
Won't mention her name, won't mention her areas, right? I just think if you put too much in your backyard being your state.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Don't put your eggs in one basket. Diversify, spread your risk. That's, I urge you all to consider that. Yeah.
And I suppose on that note, diversifying, I suppose we spoke on it previously, but there's 86 current combinations of tenancy mixes for properties. Did you know that?
Yeah. Did everybody know that? I think we've said it once or twice before. So Adapt Housing, our provider we work with very closely, they told us 86 combinations. So if you have a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom, 2-car house and there's HBS built house, you can take on board HBS, IL, FA. So the combinations are HBS, 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 or HBS, FA, FA, HBS, FA, IL, IL, FA. So all those combinations there.
Yep.
Even only 2 tenants in a house.
Yes. Yep.
Right. Even 4 tenants in the house, being no carer. There are all these combinations that can occur, which is 86 combinations, and I was quite surprised with that number too. So yeah, I didn't know that until I was told from the provider. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I suppose the takeaway for a investor would be that the funding outcomes are not always straightforward. That you might get a group funding for different participants. You might get a resident with the HBS funding, as everyone's looking for.
Exactly. So let's use an example here, right? So you have a guy who is in a group home, right? call it 40 grand a year, fully accessible, right, in a group home. He finds an apartment, brand new, ready to tenant, which it's a HPS apartment. He goes, I want in on that. He goes, applies. The provider says to him, shows your funding. I'm 40 grand a year. That's all I've got. It gets given to the investor. They say, well, hang on, why is it 100 grand a year? Well, because his funding's only 40 in a group home, not 100. So you need to have approval of funding by the NDIA. And then from there, you go to find your properties. And likewise, you may be in a group home of 5-6 people for FA at $35,000 a year, right? And you go to apply to live in a villa, HPS villa, right? For only carer plus 1 or carer plus 2, whatever it is. And they're expecting 60 or 65 grand a year gross income as an investment. But the guy only has 35,000.
Yeah.
So the funding that's approved goes with the participant.
Funding follows the participant.
Right. Remember those words, everybody. And that may not be in line with the expectations of the investor when they create the product. So again, back to the combination topic.
Yep.
There's just so many different outcomes of funding here for participants that you don't know what you're going to get. You might have a HPS or FA or robust house, but it could be something totally different depending on the funding in the background already, yeah.
So on that note, when you're talking about participants moving around, participants can break their lease with 90 days notice. Did you know that?
Correct. Did everybody know that? Just because you sign a 2-3 year lease or 1 year lease doesn't mean they're staying for a whole year or 2 years. They have the right to leave the house after 90 days of notice and walk out the door and never be seen again. Now, a good thing is, if you're a 4-bedroom house, which is a care OOA plus 3, the government will give you 60 days of income as a subsidy for that vacant room.
Which gives you time to find a new participant.
Now, that's only of the SDA income, not the RRC, okay? The reasonable rent contribution is a little bit more than the reasonable rent contribution is a little bit more than that, extra 10 grand, okay? So that only applies to
and that only applies to houses, I think.
Yeah.
No, not villas.
Not villas, no. No one knows about that.
Be aware. Yeah.
Be aware that if you have a villa investment of 4, 5, 6 villas or or apartments, it doesn't apply to them. Only houses.
An interesting point which I heard, I think it was when we went to the SDA conference in Brisbane, was that it takes 6 months on average to fill all vacancies in a project or development.
Correct.
Obviously,
not a house, we're talking about project as in like a apartment complex full of SDA apartments or villas. So 6 months to fill it up. So they obviously will be trying to procure participants beforehand for maybe a year prior. So you're in construction, right? Normally these things normally take a year or more to build these projects. So you got a year of sourcing and another 6 months. So there's a bit of time spent in sourcing participants because they only want to commit to the SDA dwelling once they see it, touch it and feel it. They can't commit in writing to a theoretical. It's often hard. It's challenging.
Yep. So I just kind of want to talk about, I suppose, just some numbers now in terms of did you knows. There are currently 2,543 newly built SDAs since the NDIS began, but there are also 2,613 being built now as we speak, Q3 2022.
Yep. So that just shows how progressive we are with our rollout of product. Still not enough though, Matt.
No way near.
Yeah. So 2,500 completed in the last 3 years, and now it's 2,600 being built now. So that's a total of about 5,000 in theory completion in the next 6 months or so. But as we know our numbers in the past, we need to have 25,000 built.
Yeah,
this is only 5,000. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just taking a look here that 3,163 Australians with disability are who are under 65 are currently living in aged care.
And that's always the goal of the government, to get as many people out of the aged care system, nursing homes, and into proper SDA fit-for-purpose products, yeah.
And you say that, but currently there's still 30 people under 65 going into aged care every month.
Exactly. So we're not hitting the target here. The target was 2022, 2023 to get everyone out. We're not hitting those numbers yet, no. Did you know that 50% of vacancies across Australia are led by units?
I did not know that.
So there are a fair bit of numbers out there who are empty apartments that are for SDA. And the amount of oversupply for units are led by Queensland. There you go.
There you go, Queensland again.
Number one. Yay.
So of the 6,858 SDA dwellings in Australia, this equates to more than 19,000 places for participants. But of these 6,858 dwellings, 4,300 are legal group homes, which are going to be phased out.
So legacy
group homes. Of these 6,858 dwellings, 4,300 are legacy group homes, which are going to be phased out and defunded over the next 5 years across Australia.
Yeah. So, it's good, because those old houses,
they're not good.
They're not appropriate for participants.
I've had a few investors who have spoken to me, and they've said to me, I really want to build a group house, and got my eyes set on a group house, and it's not a good place to be.
And Matt, why are they saying a group house? Why?
Because they want to make that money. Yeah, they want the 4 HBS participants.
4, 5, 6. Yeah.
And it's
the problem is the industry sector is moving away from group houses. The average trend is. Oh, so did you know? Did you know that the current ratio per house is 1.9 participants, residents per SDA house right now? And then did you know that it will drift towards 1.8 long term?
Yeah.
So as you know, Matt, that's an average number, So the more group homes there are, the higher the average. As they're being defunded, they're dropping off the system. So the numbers will be going down smaller and smaller. Yeah. When you think about it, look.
It makes sense, because, you got, say, a situation just like yourself, man, if you were living with 3 people you didn't know in a big house where there's not much room, and you're potentially in a wheelchair, that I wouldn't want to live there.
Yep.
I don't think. Yeah.
Now, another did you know? Did you know the Medicare system costs the Australian government around $15 billion a year, supporting 27 million people? But the NDIS scheme currently costs $34 billion on 540,000 people.
Wow.
27 million, 540,000.
That's pretty big.
This is where my kids would say Speechless, their favorite song. It's a big number there. It's growing day by day. I think we've covered most of our did you know topics here. Is that right, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's everything I can think of at the time. I suppose I always say it, but just make sure you do research and just consider that this is not just a numbers game where it's just all about the money. There's different people involved in this industry, and be aware of their needs, what they require.
Yep. The biggest risk to any investor going to SDA investment is vacancy risk and tenancy risk at the very start. Tenancy risk at the start, and then vacancy risk later on down the track. If you can build the right product, which is appropriately fit for purpose and future proofed in an area of demand, right, then you'll be fine. And the best way to think about that is, would you live there yourself?
Yep.
All right? Because the affluent areas, the kind of lifestyle in those areas are totally different from the very outskirts of a metro city, which is 40 an hour out of town.
Yep.
the lifestyle, the amenities, the cafes, restaurants, the shops, the schools, the transport, the safety, the crime rates. Big difference between the inner city and outer city areas, So put yourself in their shoes. That's the easiest way to judge the quality of the asset you're looking at buying. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, I think that's pretty much covers all our did you know ...
Yep.
Anything more to add, Matt, on this topic?
No, that's about it. I think this is a good session where we just kind of talked about some things which don't kind of fall into a category, but are worthwhile just being aware of. Yeah.
This is stuff that we've come across by talking to a lot of providers ourselves in the last 2 years. I think we'd like to impart our knowledge from you guys, our listeners, and feel free to shoot us questions and email us about any other questions you have, and we'll cover it in our future podcasts.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.